right. Hello, Tallgrass Film Festival. I am so excited to have you all here with us today. Welcome to our panel on being a multi-hyphenate. I myself am a multi-hyphenate. I'm a Tallgrass alum, and I'm part of the Filmmaker Advisory Board. So that poster right behind me is for my film Lady Parts, which I wrote, directed, produced, and starred in, and did a lot of other things that I didn't credit myself for, because that's what you do when you're an indie filmmaker. And we did win Best Narrative Short last year at Tallgrass 2019. So I am so grateful to Tallgrass for having me back. And I'm so grateful to be leading a panel that's not about women in film. So thank you so much for that opportunity. I love talking about it, but it's nice to talk about something else for a minute, right? You might see that I have two incredible guests with me who are also multi-hyphenates. So we're going to talk to, this is just going to be a conversation between three multi-hyphenates, and we're going to talk about the challenges, and we're also going to talk about the benefits. What I really want to do with you all today is I want you to hear a couple different stories, because all of our paths, I'm sure, are very different. So there are a million different ways that you can get to being a multi-hyphenate. And then the other thing that I want to do is I want to give some really practical tips and tricks that we have used in our own lives. So I'm hoping that that's what you're going to get out of today. So without any further ado, I want to introduce my guests. First of all, we have Aliee Chan, who I met as an actor, but she is also an incredible writer. She co-hosts an amazing podcast called Erin and Aliee Hate Everything. I don't know, maybe I produce it and co-host it with her. And she's doing amazing things. She's sold two TV pilots, one to CBS last season. She's working on 2 feature films right now, and she's in development on one of those with a producer of Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. So she is rocking and rolling and making things happen for herself. She's also an actor, and she's been on TV. She's been on The New Girl. She's been on The Rookie. She's been on The Middle. She's been in a pilot. She's part of the ABC Diversity Showcase. She is a kick-ass actor and a kick-ass writer. So I'm so excited to have you here, Aliee. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, dude.
And we also have with us Rowan Russell, who I also met in an actor group, but I knew Rowan from the first as someone who was also a director and a producer. So that's really cool. I've watched Rowan just do all kinds of different things. Rowan has written and directed short films, multiple, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Written and directed and produced short films. He's also a full-on producer in his own right. He produced I Trapped the Devil, which was an indie horror hit. It was in all like end of the year write-ups as one of the best horror films. And he's also got a new movie coming out that he produced called One Night in San Diego. And the trailer for that just dropped. So that's really exciting. He's also currently writing the script for an upcoming horror thriller directed by Misty Hardy. And I happen to know he's in development on a couple other projects, including a TV pilot and another feature. So Rowan is also somebody who just has a lot going on.
Thanks for the shout out, Erin. Happy to be here.
Love it, love it, love it. So the first thing I want to get into is I want to get into backstory. Right? How did you become a multi-hyphenate? Because I don't think very many people wake up and say, I want to be a writer, director, producer, actor, podcaster, audio engineer, whatever. And I also want to, at the beginning of this, I want each of you to go through all of your hyphens. So I'm going to go through all of my hyphenates, which is something I rarely get a chance to do, but I'm going to just spit them all out together. So I identify as, we're all going to say which hyphens we identify as. I identify as a writer, director, actor, producer, podcast host, podcast editor, singer, creative coach, audio engineer, sound mixer, editor, and graphic designer. And I will say those last few, I might be a little amateur, but I also think that every indie filmmaker gains some of those tools, right? We're all amateur editors. We're all amateur graphic designers. We're all amateur social media managers. That's another one I could have put on there. So I think that, first of all, anyone who's watching this, I bet you have hyphens as well. Even if you consider yourself yourself just a filmmaker, because we all, as filmmakers, do a million things. So my backstory is that I grew up, my first encounter with the arts or performing was singing in church. So I grew up singing. I sang with my dad in church when I was 3 years old. We did Amazing Grace. It was awesome. And then I ended up doing a lot of church musicals. Guys, I'm not like a big church person now. No shade if you are, but you know, it's just where I started. And it's a great supportive community to start doing singing or acting or whatever, because everyone has to be nice and they have to at least pretend that you're good. So highly recommend getting your start in church, or temple or whatever that is for you. And I also took dance classes from the time I was 2. So I've got the singing, I've got the dancing. I'm sure you're all so surprised that I started doing musical theater. So I did musical theater throughout my childhood. I did musical theater in high school, and I was like that crazy drama nerd who's like going to all the competitions, who is doing summer programs at Carnegie Mellon University and just like being the most. I ended up going, actually, here's a good one. While I was at Carnegie Mellon for a summer program, I discovered the work of Augusto Boal, who is a theater artist in South America. And his book that I highly recommend you read if you're interested is called Theater of the Oppressed. And it was this incredible program about using theater as a means for social justice and social change, to shine a light on different problems in the world. He also, you know, has different methods of using theater, like literally as therapy and to help people work through things. We weren't doing so much that, but what we did do is incorporate those social justice ideals. And so that's where some of my work kind of started to intersect, as you'll see when we get further along. So from there, I really started to consider myself an actor first, not a singer who acts or a dancer who acts. So that's where I really was like, ooh, I think I'm an actor because I love to tell stories. Now, what I didn't realize at the time is like how many different ways there are available to us to tell stories. I think a little bit of that is being a woman, growing up and not seeing very many female directors being highlighted in my youth in the 90s, not seeing very many women writers that I was super excited about. There were always a few, right? We've got our Nora Ephrons of the world, but it just didn't feel like a very prevalent thing. And I also think there's a reason a lot of people become actors first when they are storytellers, which is that we see the actors on screen. Right? When you're a little kid, you don't see the director directing, you don't see the writers writing, you see the actors on the screen. So I think that's part of why I started with acting, and I think both of you did as well a little bit. I know, Aliee, your story is a little more intertwined, it feels like. So I decided I was an actor. I ended up going to NYU for musical theater. I did a little bit of work at the film and TV studio. And then after I graduated, I realized that having a career in musical theater for me was not it. It was not where I wanted to be. I was doing regional theater where I had 11 costume changes and 2 lines, and everyone else who was there was so happy to be there, just tapping away. And I was like, I don't care. I really don't care. I still don't care. And so no shade to anyone who can do that, but I couldn't. Because I wanted to be telling stories and not just being the tallest girl in the audition who could do ballet, right? So I moved to Los Angeles, lived in LA, did some work, booked a pilot, did some commercials, whatever. Not whatever. I'm proud of my accomplishments. Thank you very much. But I found that I was still feeling unfulfilled. And the thing that was missing was the thing that I had found at Carnegie Mellon's summer program when I was 17, which was the combination of social justice and creating something, like really being the one to tell the story. And that's what was missing for me. So I ended up writing my own short film. I had been dabbling in writing and dabbling in directing and dabbling in producing, but the true turning point for me was actually when I wrote Lady Parts. So that was a huge deal to me. It's my story, and it's about it's really about something, right? It's about being a woman in the entertainment industry. It's about being the only one in the room, whether that's a woman or a person with disabilities or a queer person. And it was through that, and also through doing my podcast, that I really started to find my voice as a creator. And the podcast helped me do that because, as I'm sure Aliee can attest, we talk for an hour every single week, and we share our opinions, no matter how out there they might seem. And it doesn't really even matter if people are listening, because what it did for me was it helped me hone my voice as an artist and realize these are my opinions. People are going to love me or they're going to hate me, and that's fine. So through one of my hyphens, I actually grew in all areas. So that was really empowering to just do that podcast and let people's opinions roll off my back and realize that I'm not for everyone. And that's actually why I'm going to be successful. So since then, I've continued to write, I've continued to direct, I've continued to act a little bit here and there. I like wearing wigs. It happens a lot. I don't know. It's just like, that's my acting superpower, I guess, is wearing wigs. And yeah, that's kind of led me to where I am now. I've got a couple different projects on my slate. I'm working on a feature about, and I'd love for you guys to tell us a little about what you're working on too when we get to you. I'm working on a feature that is about basically our addiction to food and diet culture, which, all wraps into the patriarchy and white supremacy and everything. So I'm working on that feature. I'm also working on developing a couple hour-long dramatic TV series, which is a new thing for me. And I also have a pilot script for a half-hour comedy and another half-hour comedy that is kind of on the back burner, but I'm going to start jumping in on that one soon. So that's what I have going on right now during this pandemic. And now I'd love to hear from Rowan. Rowan, give us your backstory and how you kind of got to where you are now.
Thank you, Erin. That was so thorough. So I will try to follow in your footsteps as far as giving you something thorough myself. Yeah, I think just to immediately jump on something that you said is that I think part of being a multi-hyphenate is finding yourself following one path and feeling unfulfilled, unsatiated in some way, and being like, how do I fix that? And so I was also a big musical theater kid. I was not the kind of kid who was like writing and putting on plays for my parents, but I don't think I needed that because I had a great outlet from a really young age. I went to an alternative public arts school, K-8, that had this amazing woman named Elisa Elliott who ran a program called Lively Arts. And it was these three women, and they would, between the three of them, they would like adapt a folk tale or a fairy tale into like a 25-minute play, and cast every kid in the grade in a role, and write their own original songs to it. And one woman played the piano, and one woman choreographed all the dance numbers, and one woman directed it. And she and I hit it off great at a young age, and I was doing plays with them and did musical theater. Kind of, other kids were doing like Pop Warner football or soccer. I did musical theater after school. And so I didn't really need an outlet because from like, second grade to seventh grade, I was doing Broadway classics, and I got to play Daddy Warbucks and Annie and Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof, and learn all the songs and do the dances and stuff like that, and just really always glommed onto and loved acting. And then kind of took a break from it in high school to figure out what I wanted to do. Went to Oregon State University, which is not like known for its actor program, but I went because I figured, hey, I can do anything there. And it didn't take me long. It took me about one semester to realize, yeah, microeconomics is not for me. Get me into the theater department. And they had a wonderful theater department there, full of, PhDs and masters, and a library full of plays to read. And I really just threw myself into doing everything there, and, got to play some great roles and great plays. And part of, I think, what started the multi-hyphenate path there was that, and I'm sure this isn't the case in a lot of university theaters, is that you can take a class for an elective to build the sets of whatever play is going into production next. And you can also be an assistant director to one of the professors as an elective. And then regardless, if you were involved in the play at all, on closing night, you can, go out into the lobby and say hi to your friends and get flowers and then get out of makeup and everything like that. But then you change out of your costume and come right back inside and you tear down the set because they got to start building the next set. So it's very much like an all hands on deck kind of experience. And I got really lucky in that I was accepted into a program at American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, which was like a summer camp intensive based on their master's program. So after my junior year of college, I did 7 weeks studying modern theater and Shakespeare and stuff like that, and really was very much in love with theater by the time I left college, but definitely knew that I also really loved movies and wanted to go down to LA. New York was not something that was on my mind really. And the theater scene in LA is sparse, to say the least. And it's hard because everyone who wants to be an actor is trying to get the best waiter or bartending job, and those all work nights and weekends, which is when theater works. And so I was trying to build a resume, trying to take whatever acting jobs I could get, and also getting there around, 2013. And this was like when Vine was really big and YouTube stars were becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And the general consensus from anyone you talk to was like, if you're an actor trying to start out now, you're not doing enough unless you're creating your own work and your own content. And looking at people and idolizing people like the guys from Workaholics who just like got together with their friends and a camera and put together silly sketches, and then boom, they had a hit TV show. And always sunny in Philadelphia,
which is always funny.
Which is always funny. And I met a guy named Jarrett Kiesling who he was trying to make a pilot just like super indie level, and he cast me in it, and it didn't go anywhere. And then 6 weeks later, he emailed some of us again and said, hey, I want to do this again. I've written a new script with some of the same characters, but I'm setting it in an apartment so that we can just shoot it in my apartment, and then we don't have to rely on anyone. We can just do everything ourselves. And I was like, yeah, cool, I'm in. And I won't forget the first day on set, because I was like showing up trying to be the professional actor, and I had my book and I had my cell phone, and I was like, I'm going to sit here and, stay out of the way until I'm needed and study my lines and stuff like that. And he was just there by himself, like shooting it, directing it, moving the lights and lamps that he had available to him all by himself. And so eventually we got to this point in the conversation where I was like, dude, do you want some help? Like, do you want, I can invest financially and put my energy and resources into like helping improve the quality of this, as long as you're cool with me having some creative input and stuff like that. And he said, yes, I've been looking for someone to do that. And so that was sort of the start of me kind of taking ownership of like, okay, him and me together, we're going to invest in this, and we're going to try to keep improving our ideas. And then it was a long road of making stuff and kind of like Ira Glass talks about in The Gap, making stuff and being like, I don't really like this. I don't love this. But learning something from each experience. And so trying over and over with web series or sketches or shorts, just sort of improving on our craft. And eventually over time, I met more people in Los Angeles through auditions, mainly as an actor, and kept working with some of those people. And one of those people was a guy named Josh Lovo, who we eventually became roommates. And then eventually we made a movie called, it was called A Man in the Dark at the time, and became I Trapped the Devil when it sold to IFC Midnight. And off of the momentum of that, I met a woman named Penelope Lawson, who was gearing up to make her directorial writer debut. And that was one night in San Diego. And so it's really just been being on this path, trying to be an actor, and then trying to create work for myself, and then discovering that there's a lot of satisfaction and more work to be found in knowing how to make stuff for yourself, other people want to do that with you. And so that's how my journey to a multi-hyphenate came to be.
Awesome. Awesome. I actually didn't realize we were all theater kids. Like I knew you started in acting, but I did not know you played Tevye, which is, I feel cheated actually, that you've never told me that.
You had me at Daddy
We can do
Warbucks,
another
so there's
if
that.
you'd like.
Oh yes, Aliee has a deep relationship with Annie. Thank you so much, Rowan, for giving us that background. And it's just, even though I've known both of you for a long time, I feel like I'm going to learn, I have learned, and I'm going to learn even more about you in this hour or so. So Aliee, do you want to, oh, Rowan, you didn't give us all your hyphens.
I'm sorry, I did not. I identify as an actor, director, writer, and producer.
Love it. Amazing. Allie's talking to the dog. I can tell by the way she looks right now. The dog is barking.
He's protecting me from very dangerous people getting off of an elevator.
Oh yeah, well those people are always dangerous.
Always dangerous.
Aliee, are you ready? Are you ready to start?
Ready. I think she's going to calm down. So like, we'll see. We'll see.
Oh, this is Zoom life. Welcome to our homes.
Yeah, for real.
So Aliee, I'd love for you to give us your hyphens and then give us your amazing backstory.
Cool. Hi. I consider myself an actor, playwright, TV writer, screenwriter, I guess then, novelist, podcaster, producer. There we go. Yeah, I think, well, in my journey, everything kind of happened at the same time. And I always like to start my story at Annie, but I realized something predated it, which is I needed to have a TV in my room in order to sleep. So I was a 5-year-old with a freaking TV in her room. And I would fall asleep every night to like around I Love Lucy in the Nick at Night block. And I would play this game where I would close my eyes and go to sleep. And then I would just like imagine what was happening on the TV. So that was a fun game. But my journey to be an actor started with my parents thought it would be a really cool and fun idea to have 8-year-old Aliee watch a documentary about the casting of the revival of Annie in the 90s with other 8 and 9-year-old and 10-year-old girls. And I saw that because they were like, it's a fun thing. And I became so inconsolably angry and upset that no one told me this is a job possibility. 1, in general. 2, for children. 3, it was happening like next door. Like I'm from New Jersey and this is New York City. I'm like, it's a train ride. I'm in New York constantly. This is rude. And they were like, Aliee, it happened a year ago. We can't get you on Annie. I'm so sorry. And then it became a one-way train, an obsession of mine. So like, you know, school plays, all of that. I wound up in a gifted and talented performing arts conservatory during high school, which is where I took a playwriting class with a professor from Rutgers and, you know, got to work with all my professors were Mason Gross, like they were all grad school friends from Mason Gross. So like I had a really fun, good foundational Meisner background.
But for those who don't know, that's a great MFA program at Rutgers in New Jersey. So they're very, very fancy.
It was fancy. I was a child. So at the same time, I was in high school, and then my like honors lit teacher in my junior year decided he was going to teach a novel writing class, and he was like, "I really need you to be in this class." I was like, I don't have the prerequisite. He was like, I don't care. I'm going to go talk to your guidance counselor. So that's how I wound up writing a novel at 17. And then from there, I went to college at Montclair State University, where I did not have the best time, but I took advantage of being very, very close to New York City. And I took it upon myself to develop relationships with theater communities that I really wanted to collaborate with. So I started working with the New York Neo-Futurists, which is where I met my current writing partner, and which is where I met Bettina Warshaw, who I wrote a Fringe Festival play with for the New York Fringe Festival called Aliee and Bettina's Sort of Grown-Up Sleepover. It was like performance art fusion where like we played a live game of truth or dare with the audience. I was in my pajamas the whole time. I had a great time. And at the same time, my friend Sarah wrote a part for me in like this awesome play at the Fringe Festival. And then I loved theater so much, and I was like at the peak of what I wanted to be doing in theory, and I made like no money for 8 months of work. And then my brain went, well, remember how much you love television? Remember how much you love that? Why don't we try that? Why don't you like leave New Jersey for the first time in your friggin' life? Like go move somewhere else. So I did, and I came to LA. Yeah, so pretty much as soon as I moved out to LA about a month after my current writing partner. We were like kind of in touch, but didn't know we were moving out at the same time. Ran into each other. We started hanging out. I was like, hey, I have an idea for a screenplay web series thing. It's called Quirky Female Protagonist. So she read it and she was like, yo, this is really funny. Let's do this. And she doulaed this web series out of me. And it came into the world in like 2015. She's really cute. She's like a deconstruction of like, what is it? Like the female-led sitcoms at the time. So like it was around when like Mindy Project and New Girl were like really, really, really big, and everything was quirky. And I hated that, but loved it. I just hate the word quirky. I love those TV shows. I hate the word quirky.
It's become overused. It's trite.
Yeah. Yeah. So that got featured on NPR and HuffPo and all those places. So it went to the film festival, the Los Angeles Film Festival, RIP. And on the dance floor of the opening night is where I met someone from Lakeshore Entertainment, which is where I sold my first TV pilot, because you establish those relationships. We're always in touch. I'll help you, whatever. Adrian and I sold a 1-hour dramedy about like high schoolers in the Trump age. The option ran out, and then from there we sold a TV pilot to CBS. It was produced by Cedric the Entertainer, and now that we have a relationship with CBS, they're like, do you have anything else we want? Like we might be able to like be a fit with. And like from there, you know, there's the features, there's acting when I get the chance, and everything I write, I generally write for me and my writing partner. So I'm encapsulating that with all the things. And I think my journey came from just caring about a lot of stuff. You know, Erin proposed collaboration to me with the podcast. I said, sure, I'm an angry person and I enjoy being funny. That's a coping mechanism I have. Why not create creative output from it? Like, yeah. I just enjoy creating things. I'm creatively hungry fairly constantly. I feel like a kid in a candy store, and I do love candy, especially creative candy. I like collaborating and hanging out with like really dope people who are also creative and creatively hungry. So that's just the credo of my career thus far. I don't think I'm missing anything. I could be missing things. Who knows? Life is long, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that, because I actually learned a new part of Allie's story, which was the I Love Lucy thing. That's so cool.
I'm obsessed with I Love Lucy. But it was the Nick at Night block. So it was like Gilligan's Island, All in the Family, I Love Lucy. I really loved I Love Lucy, though. That's my main shtees. Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days, Taxi. Yes. Good stuff. Good stuff. Love Nick at Night. Very formative.
Amazing. Also, Rowan, I'm drinking out of an A's cup. I don't know if you're an A's. I know you're a Bay Area guy. How do you feel about the A's?
Giants, but it's okay. I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Are you Giants instead of A's?
I am, but we're both Warriors. Well, at least her partner and I are both Warriors.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm too rebellious. I refuse to root for his teams, but I kind of like the A's. Anyway, enough playoff sports talk. Allie's like, I don't know or care.
Oh, I could really fake my way through a sports talk. Friggin' watch me. It's
know.
Real great. It's full of
improv exercise.
But I love these kind of different journeys. And Aliee, it feels like the writing kind of came up alongside the acting for you, and it was all intertwined really early. And also what's interesting too is that Aliee and I would say both of us write predominantly things that we will be in or could be in, you know? Whereas Rowan, I see that you work on projects all the time as a producer and a writer that you're not necessarily going to be in. And I just think that's just another example of how like there's a million ways to do this.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I'm working
Agreed.
on 2 things right now where there is no part for me, which is it's a new exciting endeavor for me. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think personally speaking, I think that the perspective of the handsome white male lead has been sort of the norm since the 1920s. And thankfully, we are expanding and really broadening out into telling so many other different stories. And the way I see that is you can either make a funk about it, or you can get on board and be like, yes, let's tell these stories. And so I have really enjoyed working with people who are not my perspective. And part of the biggest thing of sort of getting out of my own way was being like, I was kind of having those same conversations, Erin, that you're talking about in my head, where I was like, well, I like this idea, but I just don't know. I don't know. There's no role for me in it. And the moment that I kind of got that out of my way, it opened doors to doing so many more interesting things, because those stories can be really interesting. And sometimes there's just not a role for like a cool leading male white dude in his 20s, and like I want to tell those stories. It doesn't have to be necessarily about me, and that's what's cool about being a producer too, is that like you can be working on all these different projects, and your projects will definitely increase in size if you're not only looking for stuff that fits your mold. Movie stars do that, like Brad Pitt will do Plan B and sort of have these projects in mind, which are star vehicles for himself. But Brad Pitt can also get a movie financed just by signing on to it. So it's a different scenario.
Yeah, totally.
I think I come from like the opposite end of things, because like I was an actor and then I got really frustrated going to these auditions and being told no. And it didn't really make sense that I was asking someone else for permission to do what I wanted to do. And also no one really knew what to do with me as an actor. And I was kind of taught wrongly. I was taught that like the only thing about me that was like special was like my ethnicity and my face. And I was like, well, screw that. So I wound up writing roles for myself because no one else was considering me for those. And I was like, let me just insert myself very violently into this narrative, and you're going to laugh while I do it. So like, just, so I think it's just belligerently elbowing your way into like these spaces where you've been, segregated from, more or less. So like, for example, I have a feature right now that we just finished. It's called Please Kill Me. It's about someone who's obsessed with a serial killer and like wants to get murdered by this person, right? Because true crime is very popular. However, true crime is a very white space, because white girls who die from serial killers and in general become true crime podcasts and docs and stuff like that. And Black and brown women who get murdered are hashtags, right? So it wound up being, I didn't write it for me. I showed it to my manager and he was like, you're in it. It's you. It's for both of you. It's for you and Adrian, of course. Why wouldn't it be? And we were like, oh, okay. And then it takes on this different meaning because of the different people who are in it. So like, I totally vibe with like the just taking the story where it needs to be sort of stuff.
Yeah. And I will say too, that was a part of my journey that I don't know if I said it so explicitly, but like I was so frustrated for similar but different reasons. Obviously, I do fit, or did fit at that time into the industry as a pretty white girl in my 20s. There were roles for me, but I didn't like what they were, because I was always playing some minor character. My version of being a woman is not the the thing that people were writing at the time. People weren't writing three-dimensional women, especially in those more like young women, pretty women, and some of those more like, yeah, if you were Nicole Kidman, you could play a three-dimensional woman, but not if you're, you know, gonna be on a procedural, right? Or if you're gonna be in this indie film. They weren't always writing those roles. So I got really frustrated with like, okay, you're either playing the nurse who sleeps with the doctor in the on-call room, or you're playing the nurse who gets killed in act 1, or you're playing like the nurse who steals a baby, which I liked the last one because she was complicated and interesting to me, right?
Why are you a nurse so many times?
I don't know. It's literally the number one thing. Even with a room, I've done a webinar with a room full of strangers, and they typed me. It was a educational thing where I was teaching the webinar, but we let them like type me. The number one thing everyone said was nurse. I have no idea. But that's not who I am, right? That's not who I am. Anyone who's heard me talk knows I have a low speaking voice. I am not this beautiful, naive princess that you might see in a photo of me, which also says like, girl, you need no photos. But, you know, it's just, it didn't line up, right? So what I was being offered didn't line up with who I am inside. And so like Aliee, I have a propensity towards anger. It's my superpower in life and as an actor. And so I wrote a really angry short film where my character gets to have a full-blown meltdown at the end. And that's me saying like, I'm taking control of my own narrative. I don't have to do what you're telling me I have to do, but I'm in control of this. And I think that's what's so powerful about being a creator. And I actually would offer that to everyone who's in this. We're going to get into a little more practical questions, but I want to offer that to everyone who's watching this webinar, whether you identify as a multi-hyphenate or you identify as I think almost all indie filmmakers at least identify as a director producer or a writer producer or a writer director producer, because we just have to wear a lot of hats to get our projects off the ground. But you know, that's one thing I think you can take away is to believe in your own stories and don't wait for other people to give you permission to tell them. Find a way, even if it's cheap, even if it's a shoestring budget, even if it's you have to make a short first, whatever it is, like find a frickin' way.
And we need you to try too, because I think if you're tuning in already to a multi-hyphenate panel, maybe you're already feeling kind of like I think all three of us felt. There's going to be the people who are like in the regional theater tap dancing away, just happy to be there. And there will be people who like you moved to Los Angeles or New York and you're going out for co-stars and sort of spending your whole year trying to book a role on a TV show and asking yourself like, is this it? And if that's how it feels, then like, don't sit around and wait for it to happen, because you got to generate that yourself. And you're going to be going up against, kids who started acting on film when they were 10 years old, and now they're 22 and starring in Sam Mendes movies. And then people are asking them, well, have you ever thought about directing? And it's like, that's great, but it's also like they were pushed into a career when they were young, and now they're getting the opportunities that you want. So really, just if you feel like you need to be telling stories and you don't want to just wait, then don't wait. Like, like our parents always like saying, don't get so many Starbucks lattes and finance your own short film or something like that.
Just knock off the avocado toast and you can do anything.
Knock off the avocado toast and the soy lattes and you'll have a short
There's
film.
A coffee place in my neighborhood where they sell an avocado toast, and on the menu it says millennial mortgage.
Oh, yes. Love it.
So really good avocado toast too. But yeah, if you're watching this, like, because this is something that I came up against in talking to executives and stuff, is often people are like, pick, right? And it's totally fine, if not more beneficial to everybody, that you care about more than one thing and that you're good at more than one thing. And honestly, now in the COVID of it all, it's really good to consolidate on roles, because like when you can get the director and writer and actor in one room and it's one person, that's going to cut down on a lot of people on set. My 2 cents. But that there's a lot of misappropriation of the advice to like whole ass one thing instead of half ass many things. When you're a multi-hyphenate, it's not that you're half-assing 5 things, you're whole-assing 5 things, right? And your work output is totally up to you. You don't need to pick. It's part of those singular pie, the singular creative pie that is you, and you don't need to parcel it out or like focus on this narrow sliver of like who you are as an artist. It's complicated, it's multidimensional. Humans are complicated and multidimensional. Just, yeah.
Aliee, you brought up 2 amazing topics that are both on my list of things I want to talk about. So let's talk about them one at a time. So when you talked about like having 5 different things going on at once, which I think all 3 of us can relate to, how do you balance? And also, if you could talk about a moment when you felt off balance, where you feel like, oh, I'm putting a lot of energy into this thing and these other areas are suffering. And did you find a way to kind of shift that balance back?
Aliee, you can go first if you like.
Okay. I was like, I just spoke. I'm gonna chill out. I just from a principled standpoint, I think it's good to have more than one good idea kicking at the same time. I think it's healthy not to have all your eggs in one basket. So I'm coming at it from that bias. Now, in terms of prioritizing my multiple projects, it's often like just where's the money? And like that one obviously gets priority because obviously, but I treat the money project like day job land. Like we're all committed to like a day job. If you have a day job, right? Like you show up on time, right? Cool. So everyone, I don't care if you're Meryl Streep, you have a day job. Your day job is where the money is. And then you have your creative life and your creative projects. And that one gets to thrive more often, I think, because we're not putting the pressure of money on it. So I try to balance out whatever is taking up day job space with whatever is taking up creative space. Now, sometimes when you're working on day job space, people are like, what about your movie? And it's good to have at least like some kind of forward momentum. And it's always good in those moments to just like not panic. It's just going to keep you in check of like, oh, right, I should spend a little more time on this outline because I am beholden to, trying to get this out onto market in a certain time frame. Trying to think of like a moment where I had stress about it. I'm thankfully very zen about being a multi-hyphenate. I don't know if I have advice in that realm of things. If I do, I'll think about it, but it might take me a minute.
Okay, great. I love that. I love that prioritizing.
I can definitely think of an example of what Aliee was just talking about and I think part of that is because just the way that our system of higher education is set up, in that you go to college and you specialize in something and you pay a lot of money to specialize in something, and then ideally you get a job in that field. And I think that you see a lot of actors move into becoming multi-hyphenates, but it's sort of like you got the people who are going to acting school and getting their BFAs and their MFAs, and then you got the people who are going to film school and getting their film school educations. And you don't see a lot of like people who are gaffers deciding that they're going to be actors. Maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe not my experience, but like actors, I think oftentimes tend to branch out and start trying different things just because they want to storytell. And I can definitely relate to feeling torn because I do career coaching stuff with Erin, and being like, I know I need to be like going to these commercial auditions and going to these student film auditions and doing postcards and sending letters and stuff right now. But all I really want to be doing is working on this script. because I want to make this movie. This is what I want to do. And I definitely relate to what Aliee said about having different irons in the fire. Like, I think ideally you have 6 or 7 or 8, I think we talked about once, Erin, irons in the fire.
Yeah.
And you don't ever want to put your eggs in one basket, because there's just no guarantees in this business. And also, the more irons you have, those irons can suddenly replicate quite suddenly. Like, I never know when the phone's going to ring, but I was working on a script that I've been sort of kind of trying to groom for my directorial debut at some point. And I was getting notes from a writer friend of mine. And then a producer from CAA came to him and was like, hey, do you know any writers who are willing to work on spec and write sort of female-driven horror movies in the $500,000 range? Which is like so specific, first of all. But he was like, actually, I do. And so he put them in touch with me, and he was like, send them the script that you've been working on as a writing sample. And that is what ended up getting me a job writing a screenplay for a different group of people. So I'm writing a screenplay for like the day job. And then I have my directorial debut, which I would still like to do in the future. And then there's, I have a writing partner who I work with, and we have a project optioned at Blackhall Entertainment, which is based down in Atlanta. And that's going to be a film where it's like, even if I did want to be an actor in it, I'm not, I don't have the career to like lead that movie the way that they want to finance it and stuff like that. But I could be a writer and a producer on it. So that's very exciting. And so, yeah, you really just have to be doing a lot of different things if you want to be a multi-hyphenate, because it does mean that your energy is going to be split. And, if you want to go after one thing alone, then make sure that that is the thing that you go after and put on blinders and block out everything else. But if you feel like you have a desire to do more than one thing, sometimes you have to put something on the back burner. And for me, that was like, I don't really care about going to 3 commercial auditions a week, because it takes a lot of mental energy and stress and time in a pre-COVID world where you had to drive to Burbank on a drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather be focusing my energy and my money, because you work 2 jobs to afford an apartment in LA, on creating my own work, stuff that speaks to me versus commercials. And I think everyone who's listening can probably relate to wanting to make stuff that speaks to them.
Yeah.
We just talk about back burner as a metaphor, because what I don't think gets communicated in back burner is it's still a burner. Like when you're cooking and you're making like some kind of pasta situation with the sauce and a meat and whatever, like you have the back burner going to keep the sauce hot. It's not what you're doing currently. That would be in the front. The burners, like there's no shame in back burnering. I'm sorry.
I love that, because I use that back burner metaphor all the time, and that actually just added an extra dimension to that for me. So thank you, Aliee.
Let your sauce keep warm. Just keep it warm.
Yeah, but you have to open it and look at it every now and then and make sure it's not like burning.
Yeah, it's where you put the rice.
I love.
Yeah, you don't want the sauce to get into the bottom of the pan. Come on.
Exactly. You got to stir it every once in a while. That's so great. Yeah, I definitely have had those moments, and I'll also be totally transparent. I mean, y'all know me. I'll say anything to anyone. But I work with a coach. A life coach. And honestly, working with her really helps me stay on track. So you kind of have to figure out what works for you and how it works for you. Because I work with a coach, and I'll do these things where she'll have me close my eyes. And this sounds woo-woo in LA, but it totally freaking works. She'll have me close my eyes and take a couple deep breaths. Rowan, you might have seen me do this with people. Take a couple deep breaths. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, I have to say, what just resonates now. And so she'll give me like, I'll be like, Laura, I don't know what to do. I have these 3 different projects, and I really care. That's the problem. I really care about all of them. And she'll just say, okay, we're going to close your eyes and we're going to breathe. And I'm going to just say the name of the project. You could have a friend do this for you. I'm giving this away for free. You could have a friend do this for you. And they just say the name of the project, and it'll be like, Dog Mom Pilot. And I'll say like 6. And she'll say, feature film. And I'll say 8. And then she'll say, whatever, podcast reach outs. And I'll say 2. And then it's like, okay, congratulations, you're working on the feature this week, right? Which doesn't mean any of the other things go away, but like Aliee was talking about, they go on the back burner and they're still there for me. I'm not moving on from them. And then I will say that I have had moments where the balance has gotten a little off. Sometimes purposely, like I think like Rowan was talking about, but there was a moment where I decided to quit acting. Which was hilarious because I then booked a national commercial and made my short film, and also like got called in for a co-stars and a big recurring on one of those SWAT style TV shows, one of those army men shows. And it was about, like, when I said quit acting, I was even still going to class for most of the time, but I quit worrying about it. And I freed up that space in my mind to really focus on my film. And so when the commercial audition came up, I was willing to drive across town for it, but I wasn't willing to give it any extra like mental energy. You know, I wasn't willing to worry about it for 3 days. And so I think also when that happens, when you have multiple projects on your slate, it makes each one of them feel so much less precious. Because you're like, okay, yeah, I can go into this meeting and pitch this project and it's fine. And you don't walk in with that like air of desperation when you're like, I have this one thing and it's the only thing I could ever do. So I think that's actually one of the strengths of being a multi-hyphenate, is that you always have 20 things going on. So you're just like, okay, fine, sure, whatever. But it was interesting, you know, when I did have a moment where I went, you know what? I actually remember that I really like acting and I don't have to give it up, which actually is leading me to the other topic and question that I wanted to talk about, which is how you present yourself to the industry and whether you have felt pressured to hide one of your hyphens. Because for me, there was a point in time where I was like, I am not an actor. I am a writer director, and I want people to take me seriously, because I felt, and I think this is also partially as a woman, so I'm really curious to see what Rowan has to say about this, but I felt like people weren't going to take me seriously. I felt like when I went to film festivals, when I went to the Austin Film Festival last year with a pilot script, you know, the writers conference, and I felt like if I tell anyone I'm an actor, they will think that I'm a flake. They'll think that I'm not a real writer. They'll think that I'm not really that good. And now I've come around to embracing being a multi-hyphenate. Like, it's literally the first thing on my website is like multi-hyphenate. And I think for me, part of that change has been seeing people like Rachel Bloom, who I'm a huge fan of, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Issa Rae is one of my idols. I'm obsessed with what she does. I'm obsessed with the quality of her production value, even like her work just has such a voice. And so, yeah, I've been able to look at those people and say, okay, maybe there's a space for me. And I've learned kind of to embrace the multi-hyphenate. But you also I still have to, you know, regulate that a little, because I can't tell people 7 things that I do, because their brain can't handle it. So like what I've gotten it down to, and I'm curious to see what you guys have gotten it down to, but what I've gotten it down to is writer, director, actor, podcaster, which includes hosting, producing, and editing. That's my trick to get around that. And coach, because that's another thing that I do that I'm really passionate about. So I want to come to each of you and say, you know, first of all, how do you present yourself to the industry now? And in whatever order, was there a time when you felt like there was pressure on you, whether internal or external, to hide part of who you are as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, I know Issa Rae was supposed to be here and she had to drop out, so I'm
Yeah,
glad I could step in for you
it's a
there.
shame, but thank you. We're so
Um,
glad you're here,
but
Rowan.
we all stand for her. I mean, she's great. Uh, I would say that the way I present myself now when people ask me what I do is I say that I'm a filmmaker, because that can kind of encompass a bunch of different things. And I think especially with producing, people are always like, so what does a producer do? And there's so many different ways to answer that question that it's easier to just say filmmaker. And it's easier to say filmmaker than it is to say actor. I think I'd say if I hide one now, it's definitely acting, because first of all, if you're at Thanksgiving and you say you're an actor, people are going to be like, oh, so that's so cool. Have I seen you in anything? Or has, and oftentimes that answer can be like, no, or, hopefully soon. And when you're in like film festival crowds and working with behind camera people, if you say you're an actor, oftentimes it can be either like same kind of thing, like, well, I don't recognize you from anything, so you must not be a very good actor, or like, actors, which if you work behind camera, sometimes that reaction can be justified, being like, oh great, okay. And also if you are at a film festival saying I'm an actor, it can kind of seem like you're being kind of like needy or asking for something, like I'm an actor, put me in stuff. I saw this great TikTok the other day where it was like every casting director at lunch at Los Angeles, and the guy's trying to order a salad and his waiter is like singing and dancing and like slipping into Shakespeare soliloquies and stuff like that. Because actors can do that sometimes. You have to be your own biggest marketer and advertiser. And so I would say that it's easier to make connections in the film industry if you're not putting acting as being like, well, I'm only interested in doing it if I can also be an actor in it. And
Right.
I would love to have like a Jon Favreau career. Like I love Jon Favreau. I love what he's turned into in the Marvel universe, playing these sort of like goofy Falstaffian characters. And he, directs when he wants to, and he acts when he wants to, and stuff like that. And, if one of these other areas that I focus on pops off, I would love to have that conversation sometime again with someone being like, well, I want to do something more ambitious, like in Insecure, or, like in Atlanta or something like that. But it can be hard when you're just like making short films and putting yourself in them and hoping people care. So filmmaking is sort of what I try to make my focus right now.
I will say there is a benefit to being the star of your own short film, because you never have to tell anyone you're an actor, because if they see your movie or if you put your face on your poster, they will automatically know, and you don't ever have to say it.
True.
So that's a little bit of a side benefit to being in your own projects if you're on the film festival circuit, because you can introduce yourself as a writer director, but you don't have to say you're an actor. And I will say too, I used to say filmmaker, but I dropped it because I don't actually want to produce things that are not my own projects. It's like a favor I'll do for a friend. I've produced a couple music videos for a group that I sing with, so I have a vested interest in making the music videos good. But like if someone approached me on the street and said, hey, do you want to produce my music video? I would say, absolutely not. I do not. No, thank you. I love that. Aliee, what about you?
Yeah, I think I dropped producer off my hyphens for that exact reason. Because I think, like, we all know how to produce. Like, I taught myself how to produce when I was 19 doing the vagina monologues in college, because, like, no one was giving us opportunities and I wanted to affect change. So it was like, guess we're doing this. But yeah, I get no joy from producing. And so now I'm like an actor writer, and I think the way I stick to my guns is both, I think, a fault and an asset, because when I'm confronted with a like, pick, like, ooh, like, I'm like, no, I'm an actor and a writer. You could either believe me or not. And I think it's from just like getting overlooked and underestimated for like 95% of my life, where I'm just like, you can discover that I'm good at what I do whenever you feel open to discovering that. But like, that's not my issue how you feel about me. And I do think actors get maligned because it's perceived as needy, you know, that like we want other people for these opportunities. But I think in terms of being a multi-hyphenate, it's freed me up more to be like, I'm an actor, because the perception is that I'm self-sufficient, right? Mm-hmm. That like, if I want to act in something, I can do it. And these other people know that like, they're not going to get asked for too many favors from me. But yeah, like as soon as I figured out that like I could outsource producing by hiring someone else, I absolutely did that. Like, no, not a question. But in terms of practicality and like being on set, I think it's good to have 2 jobs max. Like either just for me, for like my own creative sanity, is I like to keep 2 jobs. So like more often than not, it's actor writer. I won't try directing something that I'm in. Or if I'm directing something that I wrote, I probably shouldn't be in it, just because that's how my brain works and that's what's best for me. But yeah, that's how I present myself. It's actor writer, and anything that comes with that can come.
I love that, because I think that speaks to letting the right people into your life, right? Because someone who doesn't accept you, Aliee Chan, as an actor and a writer is not someone you want to work with. Mm-hmm. So, and this speaks back to like what I was saying in the beginning, which is knowing sometimes that you're not for everyone, but knowing that the people that you're for, you're going to really be for, because you're being specific and authentic. Authenticity is like one of my biggest values, which is why I asked Aliee and Rowan here, because they're both incredibly authentic and grounded. But yeah, I think I love your approach. And Rowan, I think your approach is like totally valid. And that's why I also wanted you to hear, because I didn't want people to just hear like what I do, because there are a million different ways to do literally everything. Rowan, was there something? No, we covered that. But so I did have a question off of that, which is, wait, it was coming to me. I had it. Oh, yes, exactly. Okay, so Rowan, this is why I was like, Rowan, did you? Rowan, I'm curious, because you have also written, directed, and acted in the same project. How did you manage that? And how did you kind of figure out how to navigate that, both pre-production, on set, and then post-production, and like how is that different?
Yeah, thanks. Through trial and error, essentially. I did a short film called Straight Jacket, and that kind of originated from sort of the problems that we've been sort of working through in this lecture, certainly for me anyway, which was that like I was kind of like you both were saying, producing as a favor for friends. Like someone I knew would be doing their short film where they were writing it and starring in it, and I would help make it possible, and I would step in and direct it for them and stuff like that. And I would screen them sometimes when they were finished, because it's always, you know, an accomplishment when you have something that's a finished product in the film world, and I'd want to show it to people. And I had a coach saying to me at the time, like, you really need to do this for yourself. And I, the fallback excuse that I would always use is that like Lena Dunham already cornered the market on like debtless college educated white people and their problems. And so it was like nothing else really to cover. But that was just an excuse that I would use because I didn't want to talk about like the stuff that was painful for me to talk about, which was that I was still in the closet about being bisexual and not comfortable mentioning it to anyone. And so I had like my group of filmmakers, Jared included, people who I'd been working on with making short films, and I had produced and acted and directed with all of them. And so I knew that if I said I wanted to do this project, they would be into it. Just the hard part was saying what I wanted the project to be about and doing that kind of thing. But, you know, once I had gotten through that stage and everyone was super supportive and on board, you know, it was hard. Like I paid for it all myself. I put it on a credit card and paid it off over the course of like a year and a half. And, but I knew who I could go to for a sound guy, and I knew who I could go to for just a general producer help and someone who would help me move lights. And I knew cinematographers from other projects that I'd worked on, and they knew where to rent camera equipment. And I knew how to go on to ShareGrid and find locations and rent locations that would be okay with filming. And then the hard part is, getting your cast together, and it's really just financial limitations. But part of being an actor in Los Angeles is that a ton of actors.
Oh, yeah.
And so there is the argument, like, if you want a short film to do well, you need to have like one character who's someone recognizable from a TV show or something like that. But you can save yourself a lot of money just by like paying attention in acting class and being like, wow, that person's great, or that person's great, or something like that. And casting people who and then I had a friend, same guy, Jarrett, who edits with me, so we would edit everything together on Premiere. And then just being in Los Angeles for a while and meeting people, I knew these two women, Arden and Roxanne Dunlop, who run their own production company, Light Layer Productions. Shout out. And
Allie
they
and
were
I,
looking.
our faces both just lit up because we love Arden and Roxy.
I don't know that. I'm just a really big fan.
Love them. Yeah. But Roxy colored it for me, and she, we'd been friends for a while, so she helped me out with a good rate, and we were sort of building each other's resumes through that. And then just like Facebook group found this person to do the sound mix for me. And so, yeah, as far as being on set, so I had Jarrett and I had my crew of guys who I'd been working with for years. And then Penelope, who wrote and directed One Night in San Diego, I sort of pitched her being a producer on this, as sort of a test run, because we were like already planning on working together, but we had never worked together. And I was like, hey, I want to do this short film and I want to direct it and star in it. Will you produce it? And then that way we can like trial run working together. And so she came on and worked on it too. And as far as being an actor in it, acting was for a large part of my life what I thought the only thing that I did want to do. So I was not super concerned about knowing if I could pull off the role, but I do, especially when you're directing it and you don't have time when you're doing something super indie and directing it and acting in it to go and watch playback every take. You don't have that option, and you need people around you whose opinions you trust to say, we got it. Let's move on. So you have to, if you're going to be a multi-hyphenate and act and direct in something, it's not something that should be for someone who's super egocentric and just thinks they know how to do it all themselves. You need to surround yourself with the people who you don't see on film because they're behind camera, who you trust their taste and you trust their opinion, and they are going to be part of what makes the final product special.
I 100% agree with that. And, my experience on writing, directing, producing a short was I had to have amazing partners, and I had to really trust them. I had to, same as you, I actually had a co-director, which was really helpful because she ran set on the day and I didn't have to worry about it. I also had a fierce first AD who was just a fireball. Her name's Lauren Heverin. She's a goddess. I love her. And I trusted my cinematographer so much. We hadn't met before that project. None of these people I'd worked with before, which I think is an example of like when you put out the right call to action, you attract the right people, because we attracted amazing people for this project. But it takes a lot of trust and true collaboration. So I love what you said about you can't really be an ego monster if you're going to be a multi-hyphenate, because you're going to have to trust other people's eyes sometimes. And similarly, I didn't get to watch playback. Other than the opening shot, I watched every single take because it was the most important thing to me. And I knew exactly how I wanted it to look. And that was the one thing where I was like, okay, I have to watch this. But I think that's really important, is also knowing your boundaries, right? Knowing like, I don't need to watch this, I can trust, or like my vision is so specific in this moment, and being able to stand up for yourself and say, no, let's do it again. So I think that's important. And then the other thing that helped me a lot was, pre-production. I'm in full on producer mode. So yeah, I had incredible help in the producing realm. However, I still was panicking about a costume we didn't have like the day before we shot. But at a certain point, I had to take that away from myself and give it to the other people and just say, I trust you. You're going to figure it out. I can't focus on this right now because I have to be an actor. And the best thing I did was I got, like you said, Rowan, I got friends to do it with me. Luckily, one of my friends was on TV. So I kind of checked 2 boxes on that with like, recurring character on Jane the Virgin, but also we're friends. So I got him to agree to do a coaching with me ahead of time with an acting coach. So I, as the director, told the acting coach what I wanted out of each scene. And then I stepped back and I put on my actor hat and I allowed myself to be coached and directed, but still with my vision in mind. And I knew that like, okay, those 2 hours are going to be my time as an actor. So I highly recommend either getting coached even by a friend or having someone do a rehearsal where you get to be only the actor if you're thinking about acting and writing or acting and directing or acting and producing or whatever, or all of them. Yeah, that's like a quick little piece of advice for those who are watching.
I want to add on for full transparency that I also did work with a coach beforehand because I knew that there was a couple moments in the short that I was like, I just need someone who does this and is outside eyes to like sign off on the story that I'm trying to tell in these scenes. And I know that like if I'm confident in the story that I'm telling, that I can get that across to the actors I'm working with. But part of me wants to make sure that I'm doing it right. And so working with a coach can be a great tool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If you're in a market where you can get coached, actually every market now you can get coached because everything's online. So I did want to also like bring this back to, I love Tallgrass. And one of the things I love is that there are a lot of local filmmakers and filmmakers from around the country that go to Tallgrass. So we're coming towards the end of like what should be our time. But I want to just hit these 2 little things. I want to know what you all think about our new virtual world for Multi-Hyphenates. Aliee, you kind of already hit on it, and how other filmmakers who don't have the opportunities that we have had as people who live in LA full time, what are some of the things they can take advantage of right now that they might not have had access to before?
What, like now that the world is digitized?
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest. I think we're going to stay digitized to some extent even after this is over, because I think everyone's realized that a lot of our work can be done virtually.
Yep. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, it used to be like you needed to live in New York or LA to get a job as a TV writer, and now like all the rooms are on Zoom anyway. So I don't know about the practicality of like who's hiring for, like, I'm not staffing a room right now. I don't know the practicality of that all. All I know is I live in LA, and if I took my laptop and went to go visit my family in New Jersey, I would still have a job. So maybe take advantage of that. Like, here's the thing, is like no one knows what's going on or what's going to happen. But if you have the stick-to-itiveness to like really just get creatively going, the world's your friggin' oyster. Like, it's all digital now. Why not? The playing field is level. The playing field is your Wi-Fi connection. That's our new stage, guys. Theater's gone for now. I'm so sad about it, but it's what we got. You got to make the best of what you got.
Totally. Yeah, I am in agreement with you, Aliee, in that like what I'm aiming towards as a goal is that if I have a laptop and Wi-Fi, I'm good. I think that people who want to do the actor grind, eventually we are going to be going back to rooms, I think. But for right now, yeah, a lot of it is just having a self-tape setup. And I cannot remember his name ever, but he is the guy who did the short film Thunder Road. He has a new movie coming out called like The Wolf of Snow Hollow. And he is a guy who created a short film that he starred in, that he wrote and directed, that went to Sundance. And then he ground and ground and ground until he found someone who would help him make that short film into a feature film. And so, like, you can create an acting career for yourself. Jim Cummings, thank you. Jim created an acting career for himself. He knew good people, he knew good cinematographers and stuff like that, but like, he could have been in Wyoming, you know, like, so I'd say film festivals are great because they're still a good place to meet people. And I will say that in my experience, it really does all just come down to who you know. And as we become more and more virtual, I think it's like, if you're going to film festivals and you're networking and you're meeting people and you're creating your own stuff and you're pushing your brand out there, it doesn't really matter where you live. And if you can save more money to go to more festivals by living in South Dakota, then more power to you.
Yeah. I will stress this again. My first TV sale came from meeting someone at a film festival. Any good that I've had in my career has come from making connections at larger gatherings. So that's accessible to everybody, right? And then, of course, like, you get a manager and a lawyer along the way, but because I had stuff going on, like it wasn't dependent on them whether or not I was working. But yeah, I think film festivals, just, I love them.
So you're in the right place.
Yay! I have my career because of a film festival, so we're good.
Oh, great. That's so amazing to hear. And actually, that's why I came to Tallgrass, because I met with a filmmaker who told me he was producing his feature because he met a producer at Tallgrass as another filmmaker. And like, I think people get confused. Sometimes they think it's to network with, like, you know, you go to some of these festivals and they have agents and big people who are panelists and all these things. But like, so often it's actually the people you meet who also have films in the festival. And that's who you're going to work with. So I love that. I actually asked this question because I have a lot of opinions about it. So I want to say some of my opinions, which is that right now, everything that is available to actors, writers, and directors in LA is available to you. So I coach. This is not a plug for my coaching, but if you're interested, definitely hit me up. We'll do the roundabout of like how to get in touch with us after, or where to follow us or whatever. But, you know, I'm coaching groups online. They can be literally anywhere. Rowan, you've been a nomad for the last like 5 months. You've been all around the country and you've booked jobs, right? Like you got this writing job. You've moved a bunch of your projects forward, literally from like 1 week he's in Vermont. 1 week we're like, where are you? Montana? Like no one knows where. It's like, where in the world is Rowan? And so he's telling you from experience that it can be done. But you can take advantage of all those things that you normally couldn't be in unless you were in New York or LA. All acting classes are online. So if you're an actor who's in another market, go take from the best people in the business. This is the time you can do it. And they're probably going to want to go back in person afterwards, but maybe if they have enough people that are not in the LA market, they might keep one online class, right? So I would say take advantage of that. And yeah, it's going to be expensive, but maybe you're saving money by living in another market. And then I'm also I'm in an online writers program that I got connected to because I follow someone on Twitter who's a showrunner, and I happened to see this tweet and apply for this program. And it's now been 11 weeks where I show up for a Zoom for an hour every Thursday, and people in that, it's kind of like a class, but also like interactive. People in there are all over the country and all over the world. So these are like new opportunities that we've never had before, but I do think some of it is going to carry over. And I think as an acting career coach, I wonder if we're ever really going to go back to having first calls in the room, or if we're going to start doing first calls on self-tape forever and only doing callbacks and producer sessions in the room. Something I'm curious about. Yeah, I don't know. And then I'm also, the other thing I want to say, which I think this is always true for people who live in another market, but extra true now. If you live somewhere rural where COVID-19 is not the massive problem that it is in Los Angeles or New York or some other places, maybe you have a chance safely to shoot something where somebody in LA would have to pay so much more for, you know, the health and safety and the testing and everything. You know, you might have an opportunity to do a very small, socially distanced shoot in much cheaper locations. So this might actually be a time for you to kind of like get ahead in your career. I don't like thinking about it that way because I think none of us are actually in competition with each other, because there's room for all of us and all of our voices. But I think it's a great use of your time. So those are
Also,
my...
not for nothing, not everything films in New York and LA, right? Like,
Yeah.
I could write a show that takes place in Montana. Guess where we're shooting? Montana.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not all the actors are gonna be from LA because that's
and the crew too.
right. And like, from a production standpoint, that's just expensive to like put everyone on a plane and then put them up in a hotel room. Like, you do need local markets at all these places because everything shoots everywhere. And if COVID-19 is not a huge problem where you live, like, that's probably where people are going to shoot.
Yeah.
Because it is less expensive. So like, you're totally valid wherever you happen to be living in the world. Like, you can make a career for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And then this is the indie filmmaker pitch that you always get in these panels, which is that, like, if you have a laptop, which a lot of people do, or if you don't, a friend does, and you have an iPhone or an Android, you can make really compelling work. Like, there's no reason. I always encourage people to just rip the Band-Aid off and get their first short film done, because you're not going to be happy with it anyway. You should just do it and then learn from what you learn from that experience. And so it doesn't matter if you shoot it on a smartphone, because, you know, Steven Soderbergh shoots movies on smartphones, and Tangerine was shot on a smartphone. So you can make something really compelling and show why you are an artist that needs to be taken seriously. If you feel like you have zero resources, I promise you have some.
I fully co-sign ripping off the Band-Aid, and we just need to disavow this like myth and story we tell ourselves about success where we're going to go from zero to Netflix in like one project. Just get it done. Just keep moving on your path of greatest good, and good things will come naturally because you're on your path of greatest good. That sounded woo-woo. I'm sticking to it. But like, you need to be creating work fairly constantly in order to sharpen that knife. You know, like the Hourglass taste lecture that you mentioned before.
Yes, everybody watch that. Google that. It's called The Gap. Just look on Vimeo, Ira Glass, The Gap. There's like a bunch of different visualizations of it. If you haven't watched that, it's what, 2 minutes? Everyone who is a creative or an artist, especially if you're toward the beginning of your career, you must watch this video. I just watched it again the other day because I like to remind myself from time to time. But oh my gosh, it's so amazing. Yeah, and the only way you're going to get better is by doing a volume of work. I want to go really quick round the table and just any tips and tricks you have. This is going to be really granular and not woo-woo and spiritual. But what are your tips and tricks for staying organized, for any, like, you know, any apps that you like to use, any organizational, how do you do your calendar? Do you schedule, like, this is an acting week, this is a writing week, this is a you know, whatever else week? I've had an actor that I know, Rachel Rosenblum, both of you know her, she's a genius. And she used to do that. She'd be like, this is an acting week, this is a voiceover week, this is a writing week. So I'm just curious for like any life hacks that you have for the Multi-Hyphenate.
Recurring calendar events. I have a bi-weekly recur with my writing partner, so that's 2 times a week, and then I have an acting class that I go to on Tuesday nights. Other than that, this is the woo-woo part that I'm going to sneak in here, is to just really get rooted in your why, of like, why you, why now, why this story, because otherwise no one's going to care. Unfortunately, as part of being a creative is like anyone can make up a fun story. The difference between what's going to get made and what's not is if we compel everyone to like really care about you and the story and your connectedness to it. So that is your North Star. As long as you have that within all of your projects, I think you're set. Obviously not because you need to actually do the work, but just that's the thing to orient yourself around, especially if you have multiple projects involved.
I'm freaking out over here because that's everything I believe, and I'm dying. So thank you, Aliee. Rowan, do you have any life hacks?
None of the kind that you suggested, because I'm the most disorganized person ever. But I would say that really the only way to do it is to just really try to create that body of work and just keep hitting it over and over, because people will be like, well, you got to make a really impressive short film right out of film school. Guess what film school is? You're basically getting room and board to watch a bunch of really good movies, read a bunch of really good books, and practice making short films. So if you don't go to film school, you better be making short films, because you're not going to get over that learning curve otherwise. And then I guess my other life hack, which it is sad that feels like it has to be a life hack, but like, read books, just read lots of books. Every time you read a book, even if it's not the one you're going to adapt into a movie, you've absorbed another story and another style. And the more books you read, you'll start to see that there's only so many kinds of stories. There are fantastic memoirs by actors, by multi-hyphenate actors, by film producers, by directors. So just keep reading.
Oh, I love that. Also, what I love about books is that they put us so much in the mind and the perspective of another human. That's so different
Mm-hmm.
from ourselves.
And
Oh,
I
Aliee
know
has another thing. Yes,
really
please.
quick about books, just because I'm a novelist and this is an epiphany that I had. Actually, it's something that a director told me when I was interviewing them to potentially partner for a Sundance thing I was applying for regardless. They also had a fiction background, and they told me this hack, right? About, showing, not telling, because I was really dialogue heavy. I'm a playwright, whatever. To really get cinematic about your scene, if you're stuck, is to write the short story version of it, because it is more cinematic than, let's say, a playwright. Than let's say a play. Because you are like a lens just guiding the reader's eye through all of this stuff. I cannot highly recommend reading books enough. I love that you said that. It is the most cinematic. It is the most analogous to working on camera.
Oh, we all love books.
Love a book.
That's one of my expensive hobbies, is that during quarantine, I've been buying tons of books. I can't stop. I don't do Kindle, so like I need to hold a book in my hands. Anyway.
No Kindle, no libraries. I got to own it. I got to underline things. I got to collect them like friends.
I am obsessed with the library, though. I love, love, love the library. My biggest organizational hack is that I use a notes program that goes from this little guy to my laptop, and it follows me wherever I go. So personally, I use Evernote, but there's a million different notes programs that can do that. I think if you're on a Mac, even just your regular notes, if you have an iPhone and a Mac and a Mac laptop, but it helps me so much because it helps me organize my thoughts. So I'll have one tab that says writing ideas. And then when I have an idea, I don't have to be at my computer or my laptop or my phone. I can be like in bed and I'll grab my phone. But then I know when I sit down at my computer the next day to write, whatever I wrote last night at midnight is going to still be there. So that's like my life hacky thing. And then I have to piggyback, Aliee, on the why, because it's so important. And I see it so often in all of the hyphens, right? In actors and producers and writers and directors, that sometimes people are trying to create something that will sell rather than something that they have a personal connection to. And I think as a producer, that's actually okay. So it's okay. And there might be a difference between the job that you take for money. Like you might write something for money, but when you're the one trying to pitch the project to get it off the ground, you have to have a personal connection to it, or else why are you doing it? And another big question that I like to ask that you mentioned, Aliee, but I want to highlight it, which is why now? So many people don't ask this question. They want to write another World War II drama. And I'm like, okay, why now? How does this relate to our world today? Do we need another World War II movie that's about all the white guys that fought each other in World War II? Probably not. Do we need a World War II movie about the Sikhs who fought as part of the British Army? Maybe. I would have been much more interested in Dunkirk if it had, or no, 1917, if it had been about that. World War One, rather, for that one. But has the story you're telling already been told? And if so, why are you telling it now? And how does it relate to today's world for people? That's a big one for me. And then the other thing I will say is use technology, use Zoom. I have been networking up a storm on Zoom. It's crazy. I'll just, set up, I'll say, oh, you want me to read your script? Well, let's set up a Zoom to talk about it because first of all, I won't read your script unless you give me a deadline. Rowan knows this. But I'll never do it. So I have to have a deadline. Deadlines are very important for me. But also, like, if you set up a Zoom, then you're not only giving notes on somebody's script, which is worth whatever it's worth, but you're also forging a connection with someone. So I've been like the queen of Zoom meetings and I love it. I don't have to drive. I don't have to park, and they can be in New York or LA or Texas or Singapore. And it doesn't matter as long as we can make the time zones work. So that's another little hack. You know what? I actually, because you're both so inspiring, I want to, first of all, let people know where they can find you, whether that's on the internet or if you want to give out your personal phone number. I don't recommend it, but you can if you want. Just tell us where to find you. And also, I want you to just leave the audience with one last little word of wisdom, because you've both just been so inspiring.
This would be a
great place to wrap up. Aliee, you first.
Yeah, I'm at Aliee Chan. It's my name. You can see it right there. It's spelled out. ALIEECHAN on Twitter and Instagram. I also do a podcast with Erin. You can find us at Erin and Aliee if you want this joint venture to be in your life. I think my last piece of advice might be, it's easy to get discouraged that you're not good at something. Okay. Make it your business to get good at that thing. We got nothing but time. Time's going to pass whether or not you move towards your goals or not. So if you are dissatisfied, I highly recommend fixing that problem for yourself by whatever means is necessary.
Awesome. I love that.
I am not on the Twitter, but I am on Instagram. You can find me at Roro415. That's like rowing a boat, 415, like the area code for the Bay Area. And you can contact me through my website, rowanrussell.com, ROWANRUSSELL.com. And I did think of a technological life hack, jumping on what you said, Erin, which is like use notes, cloud, text, or whatever, because ideas are fleeting. And there's a reason why people keep notebooks by their bed. If you have that idea when you're almost asleep, it is worth it to wake yourself up. And I will text it to myself or something and write it down, because if it's a great idea, you don't want to count on remembering it first thing in the morning.
Awesome. I love that. I am at Erin the Rye, RYE, like the whiskey, on all socials. And like Aliee mentioned, we do a podcast. It's called Erin and Aliee Hate Everything. I'll give you the brief pitch. Let's just say it's a millennial feminist queer rant on politics, pop culture, and our personal lives. It's really fun. Yeah, we like to yell, but I'm really good at sound mixing, so it doesn't hurt your ears. And I'm just going to own that because I am a genius. I'm a wizard in post. And yeah, it's about an hour long, and we're on all the places. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever, Android, whatever. We're on all the places. So if you want to find us, just type in Erin and Aliee Hate Everything. So yeah, that's that. And then you can also find me at my website, www.erin-rye.com. Just my first name dash my last name. And, you can find all kinds of stuff there about what I'm working on. And also, there are opportunities. Again, I'm not pushing anyone to coach with me, but I love coaching. And so if you are someone that feels like you need a little kick in the pants, and I believe in coaching because, as I said, I have a coach and she helps me balance everything. So whether it's me or somebody else, if you need a coach, find a coach. And I can also help you find a coach because I know a lot of coaches. So yeah, that's all stuff you can find there. And then I think my last piece of advice is actually going to run counter to a lot of what we've been saying today, which is to remember to be gentle with yourself. Remember that we're still living through a pandemic and a time of social and political and cultural upheaval. And if you need a day off, take a day off. And my other advice, and this is, from multi-hyphenates, but also for everyone, is follow the joy. Follow what brings you joy in the moment, and bring it back to our back burner metaphor. You can always put the other things on the back burner. They're never going to disappear. They'll always be there. So follow the joy. Remember that what brings you joy right now is the most important, and also to be gentle with yourself and be patient with yourself as well, because that's actually going to help you get further faster than trying to work yourself into the ground and then burning out and having to take a month off. So that's my little piece. Well, I want to say thank you so much to Aliee, and thank you so much to Rowan. You're both angels for agreeing to do this with me and just jump on and chat. And thank you to the audience. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Tallgrass. I love Tallgrass so much. And I love that they've given me this opportunity to just like talk to the people I want to talk to, and talk to you guys about something that I'm passionate about. So I just want to say I appreciate you, and we'll see you next year at Tallgrass in person, because we're all going to be vaccinated and it's going to be amazing. So until next year, let's say goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Tallgrass.